HGTV shows and, the flipping shows and stuff like that. And so one night we were watching those and I said, let's go flip a house. And she was like, not opposed to it, but she was like, okay, like, do a little more digging and we'll go from there. So I did. I found a house and it was a little 3-bed, 1-bath in Westchester, and that was my first house. And so we ended up buying it. And I think from her standpoint, I think she just wanted me to get it out of my system. She kind of was like, this is a phase, you'll get out of it. And I made 25 grand. I want to do more of these, and it just snowballed from there.
And what was your income at that time? You made $25K on the flip.
I made 25.
So on your W-2 employee going in every day, about what were you making?
Like 90.
90.
Yeah. 85 maybe.
So was the math, the engineer in you thinking,
Yeah.
well, do 4 of these,
Yep.
and so why didn't you do that?
Just security. It was one of those things that, I grew up with, you go to school, you get a good degree, you get a good job, and you work there 30 years and you retire and that's what you do. And so and there's nothing wrong with that lifestyle. I mean, that's fine. I think from my standpoint, I kind of felt like there's more out there. There's more than me just saying I'm going to go to an office every day for 30 years. And so I think it was just comfort of holding on to that and saying, no, I better keep this, because it's a paycheck every other week. And finally I just said, no, let's try it.
And so 10 days ago,
Yep.
almost a week, 10 days ago
Yep.
you quit. That is in 6 years' time.
Yeah.
What was the tipping point that you then were like, okay, now I'm fine with leaving the comfort of this W-2 job?
So we did 13 houses over the last, 4 or 5 years. We spent some of the money, but we've got a good nest egg. So from my standpoint, it was one of these things that I said, hey, I want to try this. I want to make this happen. And so, my wife was like, well, make a plan, and put a plan together and let's talk about it and go from there. So, basically my plan is, I've got a year's worth of income and I know what I'm doing with flipping houses. So let's let it ride for a year and see what happens, and then at the end of that year, if things continue to go well, then we'll just keep on doing it.
And that was so 1 year's of income was the key there in order to have the comfort.
And I've had that for a while, but it's just the comfort of having a job is what it was for me, and I'm overly conservative. I'll be upfront with that.
So for someone who is considering leaving their W-2 job for being full-time in real estate, and they have a similar amount of experience as you, when they achieve the 1 year mark of income, what would your advice be if they're considering should or shouldn't they go full-time?
It depends on, I think, what you have as far as, what's your comfort level. Are you a more aggressive person or are you more conservative? I'm more on the conservative side. I've got, we've got a mortgage, we've got 2 car payments, I've got 2 little kids, so I need to make sure that is taken care of. If someone's a little younger than me, maybe they don't have all those items, then, obviously from their standpoint, they've got a lot more freedom and flexibility. But I think, if you've been doing it for 4 or 5 years and you've been successful and you've got the ability to scale up, that's the other thing. In the past, I was always saying, so I've networked, I've made some connections where I don't necessarily have to go hunting for properties. They tend to kind of come to me. But now I'm in a position where it's like, I'm going to have to hunt for them. I'm going to have to find stuff because I'm going to have to scale up in order to do, the 10 houses I want to do next year.
What a great point, because it's one thing to have the income in the bank account. It's another to have the higher probability of being able to continue to grow that through systems that you have in place. So it's one, money in the bank based on whatever comfort level that the individual has, and then 2, it's having a system that increases probability for replicating results or increasing those results. So what system have you put in place to help with that?
So, obviously finding houses these days are quite a bit more complicated or more difficult than they were over the last few years. So, I've got to get outside of my comfort zone in terms of where I'm looking. You know, I don't want to look in you know, war zones or anything like that, but I mean, there are areas obviously that you're going to need to look at. You can't be looking at Westchester every day. So that's one. You know, for me, it's networking. So one of my tasks, or one of my goals for 2019, 2020 is really I want to network with at least one person a week. You know, so going out, meeting lunch or just getting together with, you know, a wholesaler or a lender or a real estate agent, just, you know, networking. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, you know, what they say, your net worth is your network. You know, so for me, it's just growing that and making sure that people are aware that I'm looking. You know, the other thing, like, I'm not super active on social media. You know, I post stuff on my kids and whatnot, but, you know, now it's going to be posting like, hey, I'm looking for houses. You know, I've got money to burn. Bring me your deals, things like that. So, you know, just making sure that everyone is aware, you know, this is what I'm doing, and, you know, that's why, you know, I threw it up on Facebook. I had the big post about I'm quitting my job, and you know, that's kind of my first step in putting myself out there and saying, this is what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your deals. 13 fix and flips.
Mm-hmm.
Which one did you lose money on, or which ones?
I haven't lost any money.
Really?
Yep. So my worst deal was actually a deal I did this year. Actually, I bought it from a coworker of mine, and
Your boss?
No, not my boss. No. But it was her parents' house, and they had passed away, and actually the house that she grew up in, and you know.
Seems like on the surface,
Yeah.
the ingredients are there.
Right. Wasn't in a bad condition. It was just a dated house. You know, nothing really wrong with it. And you know, again, I talked about it at work and like, hey, I flip houses on the side, stuff like that. So she came to me and she was like, hey, would you be interested in looking at this? And I said, yeah, sure. So we, you know, basically I bought that from her, and you know, we went over on the budget on the rehab probably by about, you know, $10,000 over what I wanted to
What'd
spend.
you buy it for?
Bought it for 70.
Where is it?
It's in Mount Airy.
Okay, bought it for 70.
Bought it for
Budget
70.
was
50. We put 62 into it,
Mm-hmm.
and I threw it up on Zillow. We weren't ready to list, but I just threw it up on Zillow just for sale by owner, because we had to get the cleaner in there and some other stuff, and ended up getting a buyer. And I listed it for $159.9, $169.9. They came in $169.9. I mean, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it's within a couple of days. I went, cool, okay. And
the buyer did?
yeah, the buyer did.
Okay.
Buyer came in, you know,
All right,
full price, you know, a couple thousand in concessions,
Sure.
nothing crazy. And you know, we're going through the whole process, and the loan came through and it appraised out at 155. And like the wild thing is, like, there's a house 6 doors up, same exact house, not updated, and it sold, you know, 4 or 5 months prior for like 158. I'm like, how is my fully updated house not worth more than this house? And you know, I tried to fight the appraisal, and basically the bank was like, it rocks.
What's the process for fighting an appraisal?
You know, so the loan was actually through Union Savings, and I've done a lot of business with Union Savings. And so I reached out to my mortgage broker, and I said, you know, this is a bad deal. What happened? Like, what can I do to fix this? And he made some calls on his end. I don't think he helped a whole lot, but he made some calls on his end, and he was more or less like, nah, I can't do anything for you. You know, there's nothing you can do. You know, and I reached out to the appraiser directly, and I said, hey, you know, there's these couple other houses in the area, like, and they sold for more. Like, I don't understand why this is worth less. And he was pretty nasty to me on the phone. I mean, he just
What'd he say?
he's saying like, I don't know what I'm doing, and this is his job, and you know, blah blah blah, all that stuff. So I'm like, okay, you know, and unfortunately it was an FHA loan. So with it being an FHA loan, it sticks with the house. So at that point it was more or less like, okay, I take it and walk, or I take the deal and just move on, or I walk from the deal, but then I got to make sure that whoever the new buyer is not FHA. And just knowing that area, it's primarily an FHA area, so I knew that I wasn't going to have, you know, a lot of luck. And then at that point also, I would have had to list it on the MLS too, and I would have had to pay commissions for the seller side. I did all the math, and it was like $2,000 difference, and I would have had to probably wait an extra, 3 months probably. So I'm like, do the deal and just moved on. So I mean, at the end of the day, I think I made $9,000 on it.
Okay.
I mean, nine's still better than nothing.
Yeah, and how long did it take you from start to finish?
So we bought that in September of last year, and that sold in March
Okay,
or April.
okay.
So is that 6 months, 7 months?
And is that a typical turnaround time?
I shoot for 6 months, sale to sale. So you're looking at 3 months for the rehab, 1 month just for marketing, and then 2 months to close.
Okay.
So if you can get less than that, then obviously it's better.
What's the longest it's taken you from start to finish?
9 months.
And what happened?
Big house, just had a contractor that I've used a lot, and he does a really nice job. Unfortunately, he got hooked up in some drugs, and finally ended up having to just let him go midway through the project.
How'd you know he's on drugs?
One of the other guys that was there was making comments saying he was taking him to the methadone clinic, which I was like, not surprising. But then he was real sweaty all the time. He was kind of up and down, and it just, I don't know, you just know when you're on drugs. And so, he's really good at what he did too, and I felt really bad for him because, I mean, he worked on probably 4 or 5 houses for me. And, I said, look, man, I can't, you're a liability for me at this point, because if you get hurt or, something like that, the property, that's bad. So I said, get yourself cleaned up, and I'm more than willing to bring it back on projects, but you just got to get cleaned up.
And so you were in the middle of a project. Did you have that conversation in person?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
And then what are your steps to replace that person?
So he actually wasn't there. So it was first thing in the morning. So I got there. I had some other people that were already there doing some other stuff, and so we more or less cleaned out his tools out of the house. And then when he showed up, I just had that conversation with him in person. So I mean, he had really no reason to be back in the house. We changed the lockbox code and whatnot. And I mean, could he have broke in? Sure. I mean, but at the same time, he wasn't a stupid guy, so I don't think we would have known it was him.
And then replacing him though,
Replacing him was difficult. Okay. Yeah, so the guys that I already had working in there doing some other stuff, so I basically relied on them to finish up the project, and they did a nice job. They were really slow, and that was really what drug it out. It was just slow in the rehab. I mean, the sale portion was normal. It was on the market for a couple weeks, and then 45 days to close. And
how much did you buy that for? What did you put into it, and what did you net?
So in that house we bought it for like 107.
And where is it again?
That one was in Paddock Hills. So it was like a 2,700 square foot Tudor. I mean, really nice house. Bought it for 107. And because this guy was slow, I was basically paying him weekly, which is you never do. But unfortunately, that's just how it worked out. I was paying him weekly because in the slow play, just like he did on me. So if you're paying this guy, say $250 a day, and he's just, versus hard bidding something. If you hard bid it, they want to get it done, they want to move on. Whereas if you just pay, hey, it's an hourly rate or it's a daily rate, they're just going to slow play you, and it's just going to drag out, and the cost is going to increase. And
What deal number was this? Approximately?
10-ish. So
Okay.
it was
so
2018.
You're still doing weekly after 10 deals in?
Yeah.
Was that the last weekly?
Yeah. So I mean, that was a deal. I mean, 100. We spent 120 on the rehab.
Okay.
Whereas we should have been around 80. And
you bought it for 107?
107.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
107, 120. Okay.
Or maybe it's 110.
Right.
Whatever. And then it sold for 282. So and once it was all said and done, I still made 22,000, I think, right around there on it.
And how were you getting your financing?
So it's kind of a mix. I was doing some basically self-funding. On the smaller projects, I do some self-funding. We started getting into larger projects. I did a lot of stuff with Union Savings for the first couple years, and then they kind of changed their rehab loan process. They weren't quite as competitive in terms of their rates and how quickly they get stuff done. So now I've been using Spring Valley here locally. They get stuff done pretty quickly, and the rate's competitive. So, and then I do a little bit of private lending. Well, I get private money from a couple friends of mine. So basically, like Spring Valley will do 85% of the loan, and then they'll come in with the 15%. And so basically, it's zero money out of pocket for me.
And in terms of the process that you mentioned, the first bank used to have a good process then in terms and now aren't as competitive.
Yeah.
What do you look for from a lender from a process standpoint?
So like Spring Valley is really easy to work with. I mean, they really look at the deal itself. So they're 15% down payment. They're typically 8 to 9% interest, and they do once a week meetings with their board to basically review all of the loans and say yes or no to stuff. So you typically know within 10 days if they're going to want to do the deal or not. So they're just easy to work with. Where Union Savings are a little larger banks, so there's a little more red tape. So if you go to them and you say, hey, I need to close in 14 days or something like that, they're going to be like, nah, we can't do that. Now, I have pushed on them, and they've got it done in 21 days, but that's been the quickest I've ever had out of them.
What's been the most challenging aspect of a rehab?
Contractors.
Contractors, okay.
Yes. So you're dealing with other people, you're dealing with their motives and what they want to do, and so you have to, you got, I don't want to say keep them in check, but you have to have very clear directives at the beginning of the project. So if you can have a very detailed scope of work, this is master bathroom, and it's going to have these 6 or 7 bullet points of these are the items that need to be done. You just go through the whole house. I mean, you're going to have a scope of work that's going to be 2 or 3 pages long, but it gives them an idea of, okay, this is everything that needs to be done, and then that way they'll walk it with you, and sometimes you'll get guys who are like, oh, I'll give you a price right now. And it's like, I don't want you to give me a price right now, because that's when you get into trouble. Because now you're just winging it, and you're putting no time and thought and effort into it. So it's like, here's the scope of work, and then go home. We walk the house. Go home, take a look at this, put some stuff on paper, and give me a real number. Don't just wing it. Because when they wing it, what I find is these guys, they come back at week 6, and they're like, man, I way underbid this job. Can we do anything? Can you work with us on this? I'm like, no, I don't want to work with you on this because this is what you bid. Mm-hmm. And so then now it turns into a situation of, they don't want to do the work, and so they'll either just walk off the job, or they do half-ass work, and and you got to come back and fix on the back end anyway.
It sounds like that situation has happened where they've come back and said, oh, totally underbid.
Yep.
What specifically happened in your case?
So I've only had one house that this has happened on where they did that, and basically, so again, week 6-ish or so, I noticed that the pace of work had started to slow down, and I'm like, guys, what's going on? And so at this point, then I'm starting to show up more, and when I'm showing up, I'm seeing guys aren't there. Or maybe one guy is there. They got 4 guys on their crew or 5 guys on their crew, and only maybe 1 or 2 of the guys are there. And I'm like, well, where's everyone else at? Oh, they got another job. And then it finally comes out, like, they're working other jobs because this one doesn't make any money. Mm-hmm. And so for them, it's not worth their time. Mm-hmm. So it's just a balance.
So what'd you do?
I mean, at that point, well, and then one of the things I also did was I would do penalties. So say, so the other thing we come up with is a timeline, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is. Week 1 is this, week 2 is this, week 3 is this. And then that way, and that gives you also a way to determine what are the draw payments. So to say it's a $10,000 bid, and it's say it's a 10-week project, so it's $1,000 a week. Well, for every $1,000, these are the, I'm not going to pay you the full 1,000, maybe I'll pay you 800 or whatever it is. Well, then part of that also is I would try to do a penalty, $250 a week or $500 a week or whatever it is. I just found that becomes a demotivator for them, because say it's a 10-week project, they get to week 8 and they're like, man, we're already a couple weeks behind. This is now going to be 12 weeks, and we're getting a $500 a week penalty. They're basically working for nothing for the last couple weeks, so they're just going to walk away from the job. Mm-hmm. So you just gotta, you try to be as fair to them as possible, but also try to keep them accountable.
So what did you do in that scenario?
So they walked. I mean, they basically just walked off the job.
Okay.
There was probably about a week and a half worth of work left, and I found another crew and I paid them double, basically, to get it done. I mean, granted, you hate paying them. I paid them $3,000 instead of $1,500, but also at the same time, they're holding up a project that I can make $30,000 on. So it's like you eat it and move on.
Yep. Based on your experience, taking a step back, what's your best real estate investing advice ever?
Planning. It's all planning on the front end. The scope of work, putting together a timeline. The timeline, I try to work on the timeline with them together, because what happens is you say, hey, this is our timeline. This is what needs to get done every single week. They're going to look at that and they're going to go, that's not realistic. And so you say, okay, well, let's work on this together, because then they've got a little bit more skin in the game. And in terms of developing that schedule, so you kind of put a little bit more of the onus on them, which makes them feel a little bit more involved in the project too, not like you're just cracking the whip all the time and you got to do this.
Yep.
So, and then if they do get behind schedule, then you can also have that conversation of like, guys, you built this schedule, like I'm working with you, like how can we get back on schedule? So, so that's the two big things, having a very detailed scope of work. That way, at week 6, when something comes up, hey, we've got to move the plumbing in the master bathroom because we're going to put the vanity over there. They'll be like, oh, we didn't talk about that. It's in the scope of work. Yes, we did. So it's just, doing everything you can on the front end to make sure that during the process there's no issues.
You mentioned bullet points. You said like 6 for a kitchen or for a bathroom.
Yeah.
On average, for a master bath, how many bullet points would be in your scope of work?
So, you're going to have demo, you're going to have electric, you're going to have plumbing, like electric rough-in, plumbing rough-in. You'll have drywall, trimming doors, paint, setting the tub, setting the toilet, setting the vanity, and then final electric, final plumbing.
Okay, and for each of those,
And then tile floor and tile.
So like 9 or so.
Yeah,
I didn't
10,
count all of them.
10-ish,
10,
yeah.
okay. Trim and paint. Does it just say trim and paint, or does it say more specific stuff?
So like trim would be, baseboard door casing, and trim and doors I would typically just lump those together because it's carpentry.
Okay.
And sometimes I would even do like a whole house, so a whole house with a bullet point. So that would say paint. It would say baseboard, door casing, replace all doors. If I do replace all doors, I'll put a quantity in there of 15 doors. For baseboard, I may put in a quantity of, say, 1,000 linear feet. So going in there, measuring all the rooms off, kind of just getting a ballpark idea, like this is what's in there. Because it also helps you when it goes to buying materials too. Because in that way you've got all this information, you can just put a big order in and all the stuff's there and it's ready to go.
So you're buying the materials? And is that typical for fix and flipper?
Yeah.
And why is that?
Because most of your contractors don't have the bankroll to buy it.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so typically I'll go to a contractor and just get a labor-only bid. Because they don't want to, these are guys are asking for money every single Friday. So they don't want to sit there and buy tens of thousands of dollars worth of materials.
Got it.
And plus you don't know what they're going to buy too. My thing is like, I don't want you buying the $29.99 Glacier Bay faucet that's going to go in the $300,000 house. I want to buy the Moen faucet that's going to go in that house.
We'll do a lightning round. You ready for the best ever lightning round?
Sure.
All right. First quick word from our best ever partners. Best ever book you've best ever deal you've done.
I did a wholesale deal where basically I bought it, I flipped the locks, and I resold it on Craigslist for like $25,000 profit.
Do you typically resell properties on Craigslist?
Yeah. Well, like my wholesale stuff, yeah. So just investor special threw up on Craigslist, and yeah.
Have you bought anything off Craigslist?
I have not, but it will be a place I'll be looking. Yeah.
Best ever book you've recently read.
The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins.
Okay.
So it's I don't know if you've heard of it.
I haven't come across that one.
So it's actually more into just investing in the stock market and things like that. So just for me, trying to diversify, just seeing what else is out there. And it was a good book. It was very easy to read and just had some good ideas. So.
What's your stock pick for us?
No.
Costco's done
Yeah.
well for me. I only have two, Costco and some thing that gets our dog to eat food because he doesn't eat food, strange. So, PetX is what it is. They got bought out though. What's your least favorite deal that you've done so far that you haven't talked about already?
Least favorite deal. So, probably my third deal that I did, I used a kind of a buddy of mine as a general contractor, and it just didn't go well, and ultimately it hurt our relationship more than anything. I mean, financially, I paid him out what he felt he was owed, and I still made money on the deal, but it hurt our relationship, and I looked more at that and went, that's.
Do you still work with friends?
Work with friends? No. I lend with, I've got friends that lend money to me. But,
so that experience didn't steer you away from
No.
working with friends and family?
No.
What is the best ever way you like to give back to the community?
I mean, honestly, I really enjoy doing stuff like this, where just my trials and tribulations. I like talking to new investors, and just I'm kind of active on the Facebook page in terms of people asking questions or things like that, just trying to give my 2 cents of hey, this is what I've experienced. So I like doing that.
Cool. All right, let's open up to some questions. Yes.
So the catalyst for you investing was your boss with his 2 or 3 properties in Oakley.
Mhm.
I assume as a landlord, you went in a different direction of being a flipper. Why the change?
I blame my wife. No, I mean, honestly, it was just real estate in general, and then I found, so I found Bigger Pockets. I just started reading around on there and just kind of looking at different stuff. I mean, I never really thought about flipping a house. I mean, like I said, we always watch those shows on HGTV and kind of just found interest in those. But that was, we liked, I think, the short-term nature. With rental properties, you just kind of hear all the horror stories about, getting calls at 2 a.m. and stuff like that. I don't know, maybe that's not true, but you just hear all the horror stories, and so I like the short nature of fix and flip. I like the bigger cash, chunks that you get. So, with that being said, I mean, I'm also currently looking at buying a 20 unit right now. We've got a verbal commitment, and sounds like we're going to have a conference call this week to just kind of discuss some stuff.
How'd you find it?
Actually, through my agent that I use. So
it's on market?
So it is on market, yeah. But it's a property that's listed by my agent's partner, and it's rough. I mean, it's rough. So we've got a pretty healthy rehab budget. We're gonna do the Burr model with it, and I mean, my guess is we'll be in it for $550-ish. And it should hopefully reappraise for $700 to $800 once it's all said and done.
Hi, I think you sort of answered it. My question was, would you consider yourself a GC on your projects, or do you actually bring in somebody that manages your crews? What's that?
So
And I had another one follow up.
so 11 days ago, I would sub out the GC. Today, now, yes, I do GC projects. So, and that's just more or less I've got more time available to handle that.
And what is the definition of GC for you?
So the definition of a GC is basically making sure materials are there, making sure people are there when they need to be, make sure the process is flowing as it should be. That's what a GC does.
That's what we do. Okay,
Yeah.
great, thanks.
Yes.
Question for you. How are you I guess it's a two-part question. My first question is, how do you see yourself scaling over the next year outside of social media? Like scaling with the issues that we all run into with contractors? Like how do you see being able to scale from 4 to 10 houses a year with, you know, yeah, you have more time, but how can you scale that and still keep the quality of work?
So, you know, so yes, I've thought about this question and kind of trying to figure out like, okay, what is, you know, okay, so it takes, you're basically looking at buying one house a month, you know, is almost what you're looking at. So like, okay, what does it take to buy one house a month? Does that mean I gotta go and I gotta look at 5 houses a week or 10 houses a week and say, okay, you know, you look at 20 or 30 houses a month just to find one? I don't know, unfortunately. I don't have a good answer for that. You know, obviously I've got a lot of connections already in terms of realtors that are selling different properties. You know, the realtor I use, he's a fairly large Fannie Mae realtor in the area. So, you know, while he can't give me deals, like he can't say, hey, here's a sweet deal, like have at it. He does try to help me where he can. But, you know, so it's doing that. It's the networking thing I talked about, you know, get out there and meet wholesalers and, you know, make sure that they're aware that I want to be top of the list and I'm ready to go. So I kind of look at like, it's going to be multi-pronged in order to find those properties. You know, the other thing I'm doing as well is I'm doing bank rehabs now too. So I kind of look at those, I kind of lump those in with that 10 as well. And so, you know, if I can get 3 or 4 of those, then maybe I'm not doing 10 flips, maybe I'm doing 6 flips, you know, that becomes a little easier. So, yeah, and as far as the crew, I think you're always just gonna be, it's just gonna be cyclical with those guys. You're just gonna be cycling through them all the time, unfortunately. You know, and you might stumble across some good ones, but, yeah.
Yes.
So you mentioned some of your contractor issues that sound very familiar. When you guys run into an issue on a project where there was an unforeseen change order, there's some major issue that was hidden, how do you guys handle that, particularly when you were not there every day? How would you handle that when those issues came up?
So when I was working with like a general contractor, he would call me and basically say, and I was still going to houses. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was still probably going to the houses once a week or something like that, just to do the walkthroughs and see what's going on. You know, and I had enough flexibility with my job that I was able to, if a real issue did arise, I could, you know, adjust some things and be able to go there and see what's going on. So, but I mean, if it's way outside the scope of work, then, you know, we have a conversation of, hey, what's it gonna take to fix this? You know, and figure out what's the best avenue.
So with that said, he's giving you basically an estimate on, hey, this is roughly what it's going to be to correct whatever the unforeseen issue is, and then you guys come to an agreement at that point before he goes and does the work?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if he's gonna go in and fix it and basically not tell me about it, that's not on me. You know, you didn't tell me about it, I know nothing about this.
John?
Sounds like there are a lot of people with contractor questions and issues here, so I have another one for you.
Okay.
Now that you're really GCing your own projects, what advice would you give for people looking to find good GCs?
Good question. Answer that.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I mean, I
Don't
think
trust your friends.
I think the big thing is understanding, you know, what is their organizational skills. You know, you've got some general contractors that, you know, they've got a couple projects and they're kind of scatterbrained and they're all over the place, and then you've got some general contractors where they're like, man, I'm working on 7 or 8 different projects right now. You know, this is the system we use, whether it's FreshBooks or QuickBooks or whatever it is, and you know, they're providing you a detailed bid. You know, you get these guys, they provide you with a one-line bid of, you know, remodel house, $10,000. It's like, okay. Or, you know, you got guys that are like, here's our 6-page bid, and, you know, every single line item that we're gonna do. And, you know, you kind of know, like, okay, those guys, they took the time to understand your project, and you know, hopefully that equates into the work being done. You know, the other part of it is also asking, like, how many guys actually work for you? You know, how many guys are considered W-2 underneath your company versus you just 1099 out a subcontractor of some sort. You know, the guy comes back and says, hey, you know, I've got 4 guys that are actually on my payroll, you know, then you know that they at least, I think they at least mentally grasp business. You know, and I think that's the big part, I think, that you see lacking in a lot of these general contractors. They just don't mentally grasp basic business.
Do 2 more questions.
What software are you using for planning and accounting?
Excel.
Okay.
But no,
Excel for your
yeah.
dance?
So Excel currently. To be honest, though, I'm in my account. My CPA has been yelling at me for probably 2 or 3 years now to get QuickBooks. So I'll probably be going to QuickBooks. You know, since I'm going to be doing more projects and be doing you know, this bank rehab stuff as well, I'll have to go to something.
Did you, at work, did you use any of Microsoft, like Project, or any of your W-2, and I didn't know if you...
I used Project a little bit, not too much, but I did use it. You know, and then we've used, you know, you know, I've used Oracle and Sage and what's the Microsoft one? Whatever their CRM system.
I just wonder if you thought anything was applicable to doing, since if you're gonna scale up, if you think that's gonna...
Maybe. I mean, I think it's probably cost prohibitive at this point in time.
Last question, no pressure. Gotta be
With
good.
tax time coming around, and as a new investor, what are some of the general things that you can write off? I mean, just run down, like, I mean, as a new investor coming in, what are some things, you know, you wanna make sure that you, I mean, it could be.
I'm not a CPA, but I do ask, you know, my CPA to be liberal with write-offs. But I mean, like, you know, I've got a truck, and so I write that off, and you know, and which, I mean, you can. I mean, it's a work vehicle, so you know, things like our cell phone bill and mileage and just, you know, anything. I feel like anything that if you're out in the field or you're doing something that's business related, it's a write-off.
Do we have any CPAs today?
Where's Phil?
Oh, yeah. Are you good?
Yeah.
Huh. You talked to Gastone afterwards, too. Cool. Tim, thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Appreciate it. Yeah.